It was an age governed by the unwritten laws of the wild, a code of survival etched into the very fabric of existence. Colossal beings, biological marvels of scale and power, moved across continents as if they were their own. The predators, in turn, were not mere hunters. They were engines of mortality, finely tuned machines of tooth and claw whose presence shaped the landscape itself. 66 million years ago, the Earth was a crucible of life, a world of staggering abundance. Giants walked the plains, swam the oceans, and commanded the skies. From the smallest feathered hunter to the majestic dozens of tons titans, the dinosaurs reigned supreme, masters of every conceivable ecosystem. A complex and ancient web of life, woven over millennia of geological change, pulsed with vitality. In the tropics, vast humid forests stretched to the horizon, a symphony of strange calls and perpetual growth. Along the coastlines, warm, shallow seas cradled marine reptiles. The long-necked plesiosaurs gliding craft cast fleeting shadows upon the world below. Had history continued on its course, one can only speculate what these creatures might have become, perhaps evolving even greater complexity, even sentience. But destiny, born in the cold, silent void, had other designs. Far beyond the blue atmosphere, a colossal object was on a collision course with history. An asteroid, nearly 6 miles in diameter, hurtled through space. Dislodged from the great belt between Mars and Jupiter by the slow, inexorable dance of gravity, it carried an energy that would rewrite the future of a planet. Insula. The impact was absolute. It unleashed the force of an estimated 10 billion atomic bombs. The Chicxulub crater, a scar over 90 miles wide, is the silent testament to that moment of planetary trauma. The initial blast vaporized billions of tons of rock, ejecting a superheated plume into the highest reaches of the atmosphere. A searing thermal pulse ignited forests across the globe, and a seismic shockwave, a tremor of unimaginable power, rippled through the planet's crust. Re became a shroud. Pulverized rock and sulfur aerosols climbed into the stratosphere, forming a dense, impenetrable veil that encircled the world. Sunlight, the source of all life, was choked off. The planet was plunged into a deep, unending twilight. The age of giants had ended not with a roar, but with a creeping, silent cold, demonstrating that even the most dominant reign is but a fragile moment, vulnerable to a single, terrible day from the heavens. The great engine of life on Earth sputtered and then fell silent. With the sun's light choked off from the surface, photosynthesis ceased. The foundational process that sustained nearly every ecosystem on the planet was extinguished, and with it, the very base of the food chain crumbled into dust. Deep within the rock, drilled from the scarred inner rim of the Chicxulub crater, lies a profound and telling silence. In the layers corresponding to the moment of impact, there is a conspicuous absence of sulfurous material. The surrounding geology is rich in sulfide-bearing rock, yet the impact core itself is barren. This is not an oversight of nature, but the fingerprint of a global catastrophe. The data reinforces a chilling hypothesis. The asteroid did not merely strike the Earth, it weaponized it, vaporizing and unleashing colossal quantities of atmospheric sulfur. An aerosol shield of sulfuric acid droplets blotted out the sun, plunging the planet into a long, artificial winter. Computer simulations, grounded in this geological evidence, paint a grim portrait of the aftermath. The global average temperature plummeted by more than 20 degrees Celsius. For some 30 years, the world remained locked in this deep freeze, an era of perpetual twilight and relentless cold. But did the titans of the Cretaceous vanish in that first, fiery instant? The geological record whispers a more protracted, agonizing story. Fossil evidence suggests that some species, clinging to life in isolated pockets, may have endured for weeks, months, perhaps even years. The smaller herbivores, those with Moriae. The ecological destruction, however, was both swift and merciless. Through the gloom of falling ash and beneath a sky of poison, the last survivors navigated a hellscape. They scavenged amidst the wreckage of a former world, snatching scraps from the bodies of the fallen before darting back to the precarious safety of a burrow or a cave. All around them lay the colossal, dying bodies of a dynasty that had ruled for 150 million years, the once feared masters of the earth now reduced to decaying monuments of a bygone era. In the reduced to smoldering embers, coastlines were scoured clean by tsunamis of impossible scale, and trillions of tons of vaporized rock, ash, and dust billowed miles into the atmosphere, ensuring the sun would remain a distant, forgotten memory. The Cretaceous, once a symphony of vibrant life, was now descending into a mortal hush. Beneath the darkened skies, a world once defined by majestic dinosaurs was transforming into a theater of extinction. Consider the Triceratops, a fortress of flesh and bone, a symbol of resilience and power. In the world before, herds thundered across sun-drenched plains, grazing on the lush ferns and cycads that flourished under a benevolent sun. Their immense bony frioration of S and thriving in community. But after the impact, against a blackened sky that starved the very ground beneath their feet, their strength meant nothing. The vegetation that fueled their massive bodies withered and died. Desperate and disoriented, the once mighty herds began to fray. Their formidable bodies, engineered to battle predators, possessed no answer to the gnawing emptiness of starvation and the relentless, creeping cold. The sterile earth offered no sanctuary. One by one, their robust forms fell, turning the verdant plains of their ancestors into a silent graveyard of Titan. And then there was the king, Tyrannosaurus Rex, an apex predator whose very presence was a synonym for terror and absolute power. Its reign was predicated on a world of abundance, a thriving ecosystem it could dominate. But as its prey succumbed to starvation, the great hunter found itself stalking ghosts in a barren wasteland. The final tyrannosaur did not fall in a cat place by the whisper of the wind across a desolate, empty world. The extinction event was not merely an end, but a violent clearing of the stage. It serves as a stark, planetary reminder that no dominion is absolute, and that even the mightiest empires of flesh and bone are ultimately subject to the cold, indifferent mechanics of the cosmos. Its jaws, an engine of annihilation, were engineered to pulverize bone. Its roar was not merely a sound, but a force of nature, a tremor that rippled through the very bedrock of the late Cretaceous world. For millions of years, Tyrannosaurus Rex was the undisputed tyrant king, the embodiment of predatory perfection. It moved through its domain with an absolute, terrifying authority, hunting with a calculated mastery, consuming its prey with a finality that left nothing but echoes. It was a scavenger of opportunity, claiming the kills of lesser giants with an intimidating presence alone. It was the apex of a long and violent dynasty. But the throne of this world was built upon a fragile foundation. Even this monarch of carnivores was no match for the catastrophic forces gathering in the cosmos. 66 million years ago, the sky fell. In the aftermath of the impact, the world the Tyrannosaur knew was erased. The sun vanished behind a shroud of soot and ash, and a chilling, perpetual twilight descended. The great herds of herbivores, the walking larders that sustained its colossal frame, began to vanish. The king was reduced to a desperate scavenger. In the gloom of a dying planet, it stalked the poisoned landscapes, its magnificent senses now tuned to the scent of decay. Every rotting carcass became a battlefield, a prize to be won not from lesser predators, but from its own kind. The battles that ensued were a horrifying spectacle of desperation. Two titans, once rulers of all they surveyed, now locked in a brutal, primal struggle over a few putrid mouthfuls of flesh. In this new world, every scrap of sinew, every shard of bone, was the difference between one more day of existence and the final, cold oblivion. But there was no escaping the fundamental truth. The great chain of life had been shattered. The fallen giants, the vast, lumbering sauropods, and the majestic horned ceratopsians were now just decaying monuments to a bygone era. Their numbers could no longer sustain a predator of this magnitude. As weeks bled into months of unending despair, the great Tyrannosaurus was hollowed out by a foe it could not bite, an enemy it could not intimidate: starvation. Its immense power became a cruel irony, a furnace that required fuel the world no longer possessed. Its final roar echoed across a silent, barren world, a king's lament for a kingdom that had already turned to dust. The tyrant lizard fell, and an epical silence descended in its place. Elsewhere in this shattered world, another titan faced its own, more ironic demise. The Ankylosaurus, a living fortress, had been the master of defense. It was a walking citadel of bone and keratin, impervious to the onslaught of any predator. Its impenetrable armor of fused osteoderms could repel the most powerful jaws, while its tail, a sledgehammer of solid bone, could shatter the leg of a tyrannosaur with a single, well-aimed blow. It grazed on the low-lying ferns and cycads, a peaceful, indomitable presence on the plains. But when the heavens rained fire and the earth was choked with ash, its invincibility became a fatal flaw. The very defenses that had guaranteed its survival now sealed its doom. This armored behemoth, once a master of its environment, found itself wandering through a gray, lifeless desert. Its formidable armor, its bone-crushing tail, they were utterly useless against an enemy that was everywhere and nowhere. That which had been its greatest strength was now its most profound weakness. The immense tonnage of its body, the very mass that made it so formidable, became a curse. It demanded constant fuel, a relentless intake of vegetation. But the soil was poisoned, the plants were withered, and the sun, the engine of all plant life, was a ghost in the sky. Day after agonizing day, the Ankylosaurus roamed, each step heavier than the last, each search for sustenance more fruitless. Hunger, an invisible and invincible predator, gnawed at it from within. Exhaustion became its constant companion, and in the end, its unbreakable armor could not shield it from the slow, inevitable collapse. It became a tomb, encasing a giant that had been conquered not by tooth and claw, but by the absence of a single. One by one, the colossi of the Cretaceous were extinguished. These creatures, who had governed the Earth for over 150 million years, became silent victims of a cosmic violence they could neither comprehend nor escape. It was not a stronger predator that brought them low, but the impartial, unforgiving mechanics of planetary science. As the last of the giants fell, the age of dinosaurs drew to a close, yielding the wounded planet to a new and uncertain chapter in the story of life. Yet the fossil record whispers a final, haunting postscript. In the Rogists, that for a brief, desperate period, some populations clung to existence on the planet-wide boneyard, less dependent on a healthy vegetation base. These survivors, however, were ghosts clinging to a dead world. They were the last embers of a firestorm, facing an increasingly inhospitable reality, where resources dwindled with each passing day, and competition was a fight to the death. Theirs was not a new beginning, but a brief, desperate epilogue to a finished epic. For true power is not measured by size or strength, but by the ability to endure change. Dominion is not a permanent decree written in stone, but a fleeting privilege, granted by a world that is, and always will be, in constant, relentless transformation. The seas, once teeming with a vibrant and complex tapestry of life, did not escape the unravel with debris. Entire marine ecosystems, perfected over eons, were scoured from existence. The great sea dragons, the mosasaurs, apex predators of a lost world, were annihilated, their reign extinguished in a flash of celestial violence. And yet, in this global necropolis, the seeds of recovery were sown by the most unassuming of survivors. As the colossal vertebrates vanished, microscopic plankton, the dust of the sea, began the painstaking work of resurrection. These tiny organisms, forming the very foundation of the marine food web, endured the darkness and the acid rain. Slowly, imperceptibly, They began to photosynthesize once more, pumping the first breaths of new life back into the poisoned waters, patiently rebuilding a shattered world from the bottom up. The question, then, is one of brutal selectivity. In the face of planetary catastrophe, why do some fall while others endure? The answer is not a single key, but a combination of locks, size, diet, and the sheer fortune of adaptation. On the scorched earth, among the smoldering remains of giants, a different kind of creature stirred. Small mammals, no larger than rats, had found sanctuary in the underworld. By burrowing deep into the soil, they escaped the searing heat of the initial blast and the suffocating blanket of ash. When the long twilight of the impact winter descended, their subterranean shelters protected them from the lethal cold. Their survival was a masterclass in opportunism. While specialized dinosaurs starved, these generalists survived on whatever the ruined landscape offered: insects, roots, and the hardy seeds that lay dormant, waiting for a sun that might never return. But the story of survival has another, more familiar protagonist. For the dinosaurs were not entirely erased. Their legacy echoes in every birdsong, a direct, unbroken lineage stretching back across the chasm of extinction. Modern science confirms that today's birds are the descendants of small, feathered theropods, dinosaurs that possessed a suite of traits which, by chance, became a ticket to survival. Feathers, which may have first evolved for insulation or elaborate courtship displays, proved to be a crucial asset. In the freezing, sunless years after the impact, this downy coat was the difference between life and death. Their small size was no longer a disadvantage, but a virtue, requiring far less food to sustain. And their most profound adaptation, the power of flight, gave them unparalleled mobility. While earthbound creatures were trapped in dying ecosystems, these avian dinosaurs could traverse continents, seeking out rare pockets of refuge where life still clung on. Their beaks, another critical innovation, allowed them to crack open the tough shells of seeds, a vital food source when all else had turned to dust and decay. Even so, the Chicxulub asteroid was not a singular bolt-from-the-blue executioner. It was the final, devastating blow to a world already under immense stress. Emerging research reveals that long before the skies fell, the dinosaurs were contending with a homegrown apocalypse. In the region of modern-day India, the Deccan Traps, a volcanic province of staggering scale, had been erupting for thousands of years. These eruptions spewed colossal quantities of greenhouse gases into the atmosphere, poisoning the air and destabilizing the global climate. The world of the late Cretaceous was already a planet on edge. In this crucible of chaos, survival was a matter of seizing the moment, of leveraging ancient traits for unforeseen change, the way to persist. They were not titans of strength, but paragons of resilience. Their lightness and agility, honed for life in the trees and undergrowth, allowed them to navigate a broken and treacherous world. In the end, it was not the strongest, nor the largest, that inherited the earth. It was the adaptable, the small, the fortunate. Extinction is not merely an absence, it is the silent, fertile ground from which new worlds are born. In the aftermath of a world scrubbed clean by fire and stone, when the skies were choked with ash and the great reptilian dynasties had fallen silent, life clung on in the smallest of pockets. High in the skeletal remains of Cretaceous forests, a creature perfectly adapted to an arboreal existence quietly endured. Small, feathered, and with habits born of shadow, it hunted insects and tiny vertebrates, its diminutive stature allowing it to escape the worst of the planetary devastation. As the long winter of the impact gave way to a fragile dawn, this salniches, unknowingly setting the stage for the next great chapter in vertebrate evolution. Among these pioneers was the Microraptor, a creature of breathtaking ingenuity. It was a unique biological marvel, possessing not 2 wings, but 4, a feathered specter gliding through the regenerating canopy. This remarkable adaptation was more than a tool for efficient hunting. It was a key to unlocking untouched resources, a passport to a 3-dimensional world of unexplored branches and hidden hollows. Its intricate plumage and delicate delta-shaped structures were a testament to a new evolutionary doctrine. In a world demanding flexibility, The advantage belonged not to the powerful, but to the small and the adaptable. The genetic blueprint for this success was written long before the cataclysm. Perhaps the most famous ghost in this evolutionary tapestry is Archaeopteryx. Though it lived many millions of years before the asteroid struck, its lineage passed down a vital inheritance to the survivors. The fundamental traits it pioneered, lightweight bones, advanced foraging skills, and the lightning-fast reflexes of a feathered hunter, proved to be the essential toolkit for survival in the extra. They became the architects of the next, paving the way for the 10,000 species of birds that fill our skies today. Over the ensuing millennia, a profound transformation took place. These resilient theropod survivors diversified, their forms branching into the myriad shapes we now recognize as birds. Every sparrow, every falcon, every duck carries within its DNA the undiluted legacy of the dinosaurs. Some wear this heritage more openly than others. Look no further than the imposing cassowary of New Guinea's rainforests, a living echo of theropod Fiat's head. It is a creature that has forgotten nothing of its savage ancestry. It is a vivid, walking reminder of the power that once ruled this planet. Even the most familiar of birds conceals a formidable history. The common domestic chicken, a creature that seems the very definition of mundane, shares a direct and startling genetic connection to the most fearsome predators of all, including the tyrant lizard king itself, Tyrannosaurus Rex. Genetic analysis reveals the ghost of the Leviathan in the bones of the barnyard fowl. To listen to the sharp, piercing crow of a rooster at dawn is to hear a distant, transformed echo of the colossal roar that once thundered across the prehistoric plain. This lineage of power is visible elsewhere. The ostrich, with its immensely powerful legs and astonishing speed, is another direct link to that ancient past. Its bipedal stance and incredible endurance are clear inheritances from its fleet-footed dinosaur ancestors. Its close relative, the emu, shares the same robust constitution that allowed its predecessors to thrive in a world of relentless pressure. Nor is this legacy confined to the placid ducks and geese of our wetlands. Paddling serenely across lakes and marshes, have roots that stretch deep into the Mesozoic era. Yet, as these avian dinosaurs claimed the skies as their inheritance, another story of survival was unfolding below. The mammals, small, nocturnal creatures that had spent over 100 million years living in the shadows of the great reptiles, now emerged into the light. The Paleogene period became a time of rebirth, a planetary-scale laboratory for evolutionary experimentation. With the great suppressors gone, the Earth became a canvas for new forms of life to flourish. The age of reptiles had ended, but life itself had not. From the ashes of one dynasty, two more would rise to inherit the world, one to rule the air, and the other, the land. It is the enduring story of existence, that for life to find a new way, the old way must first come to a spectacular end. In the Dio, the specter of the dinosaurs lifted from the planet, the meek inherited a shattered Earth. From the scorched soil and choking dust, a new protagonist emerged, no larger than a field explorer, a world they had once hidden from. These were the children of the night, descendants millions of years. They had honed their senses in the perpetual twilight beneath the feet of giants. Their nocturnal habits, their acute hearing, their profound reliance on scent, these were not merely adaptations, but survival tools forged in the crucible of fear. In a world now rebuilding itself from bedrock, these very traits proved to be the keys to a kingdom. They were vital assets in a landscape cloaked in a perpetual sunless gloom, where sensing a fungal food source or the tremor of a collapsing rockfall meant the difference between life and a swift, anonymous death. The devastation was not confined to the land. The oceans, once teeming with colossal marine reptiles and the intricate spiraled shells of ammonites, had become a chemical wasteland. The impact's fallout had turned the surface waters acidic, dissolving the shells of the microscopic plankton that formed the very base of the marine food web. The chain reactional predators, perhaps ancient sharks and resilient bony fish, navigated the murky chaos, helping to slowly, painstakingly, restore a semblance of balance to the seas. As the planet's fever broke and the dust began to settle over centuries, the climate shifted dramatically. A new, warmer, and wetter age dawned. Vast whole sea levels rose, redrawing the maps of the world. Within these nascent ecosystems, the survivors began to radiate. Mammals, birds, and the remaining reptiles diversified with explosive speed, pouring into the countless ecological niches left vacant by the fallen titans. It was a grand evolutionary experiment where tragedy had cleared the board, presenting an unprecedented opportunity for innovation and renewal. But what of the giants themselves? For how long did the last of the non-avian dinosaurs truly endure? The end was not a single instantaneous event. For most, the apocalypse came swiftly. Within weeks, perhaps months of the initial impact, starvation and the complete collapse of their environment claimed the vast majority. Yet it is hauntingly possible that in the most remote, sheltered pockets of the planet, a few isolated populations clung to a ghost of an existence. One can imagine the last Triceratops or a lone Tyrannosaur wandering through a desolate alien landscape of rotting vegetation and gray skies, their world becoming utterly unrecognizable before their eyes. These final years were not a story of resilience, but a protracted, inevitable march into oblivion, a slow-motion extinction driven by ever-increasing environmental pressures and the final disappearance of every last resource. However, as the last of the great lizards took its final breath, a different lineage, their direct descendants, was taking flight. For the birds, this was not an ending, but a genesis. Their inherited characteristics, the insulation of feathers, the power of flight, a rapid metabolism that could endure the cold, and complex social behaviors, made them uniquely equipped to thrive in a world torn asunder. They were the living legacy of the dinosaurs, a testament to the fact that evolution never truly lets go of a successful design. The cosmic impact shaped the future in more subtle ways, too. On the forest floor, a quiet revolution was underway. The world's flora had been transformed. Angiosperms, the flowering plants, proved to be remarkably resilient to the harsh, arid conditions of the impact winter. Their faster life cycles and robust seeds allowed them to outcompete the more ancient ferns and conifers. Their eventual dominance fundamentally re-engineered the planet's ecology. This botanical shift directly influenced the evolutions, the distant, humble ancestors of every human alive today. And what of the cataclysm itself? Was it merely a random act of cosmic violence? Some scientists now gaze upon the deep history of our planet and see not chaos, but a chilling pattern. They observe a curious periodicity in mass extinction events, a rhythm of destruction that may be linked to the gentle gravitational oscillations of our solar system as it moves through the plane of the Milky Way galaxy. This theory suggests that Earth passes through periods of heightened vulnerability, cosmic shooting galleries, where impacts from asteroids and comets become terrifyingly more probable. The event that ended the Cretaceous was not just an isolated tragedy, but perhaps one beat in a vast galactic pulse. Our very existence, then, is the improbable outcome of a planetary catastrophe, an inheritance from the small and the steadfast who survived the end of their world. We are the beneficiaries of cosmic chance, the descendants of creatures who dared to challenge the impossible odds in the shadow of annihilation. For in the grand, indifferent theater of the cosmos, every ending is but the violent, necessary prelude to a new beginning. It was an ending, a punctuation of fire and dust drawn across 180 million years of history. But it was not the end. Among the embers of this global funeral pyre, a survivor stirred. Purgatorius. The oldest primate known to science, a creature no larger than a squirrel with the furtive energy of a shrew. In a world scoured clean of its titans, this small, unassuming mammal, despite the drastic ruin of its environment, clung to a thread of existence. Life had not succumbed. For the meek, for the mammals, a brutal new chapter had just begun. History had known greater apocalypses. The Great Dying, 252 million years prior, had been a slow, suffocating execution, extinguishing an astonishing 95% of all marine life and 70% of terrestrial vertebrates. But the death of the Cretaceous was different. It was a sudden, violent trauma, an assassination from the heavens. In a geologic instant, the world's most iconic inhabitants were erased. The tyrant lizard king, Tyrannosaurus, was silenced. The great horned-faced herbivore, Triceratops, fell. Even the planet's more fossil records. Into this profound silence, into this ecological vacuum, the Mamma Kingdom. They occupied the niches abandoned by the fallen giants, filling the roles that today belong to rodents, scuttling through a world of ash and decay, adapting to survive on a planet that had been fundamentally broken. Paleontologists now estimate that 75% or more of all species on Earth were wiped from existence. The Great Winnowing established a new rule for survival. To be large was to be doomed. Almost no creature weighing more than 25 kilograms, or 55 pounds, made it through the cataclysm. Yet, life is tenacious. In the murky waters, the ancient crocodilians, veterans of past extinctions, endured. And in the skies and forests, a direct lineage of the dinosaurs themselves found a new path. The primitive birds, with their light bodies and unparalleled adaptability, soared over the wreckage, their survival a testament to an evolutionary legacy that had not been entirely severed. For a fleeting moment, perhaps a decade, perhaps less, a few scattered, non-avian dinosaurs may have persisted in the most remote corners of the globe, the last echoes of a lost world. But their time was over. Their avian descendants, however, were poised to flourish. The question that haunts us is not just what happened, but why then? Why did the Chicxulub impactor arrive at that precise moment in cosmic history? The answers remain buried in the deep time of the cosmos. Some scientists propose that subtle gravitational shifts within our own solar system may have nudged the asteroid from its stable orbit in the belt between Mars and Jupiter. Others theorize a more dramatic cause, the ghost of a long-dead star, a distant supernova sending a shockwave of energy across the galaxy, destabilizing celestial bodies and sending one on an inexorable collision course with Earth. For all that we can reconstruct, for all the rock and bone we can analyze, the deepest questions remain. What would our world be had the asteroid missed? A planet where the reptilian mind, not the mammalian, had been granted the gift of deep time to evolve consciousness. Was the supremacy of mammals an inevitability, a destiny that would have unfolded regardless? We cannot know. We only know that the Earth was irrevocably altered. From the ashes of that celestial collision, the mammals emerged, no longer living in the shadows, but as the new architects of the planet. The staggering diversity we see today, the very existence of our own species, was purchased with the fire of that ancient catastrophe. The dinosaurs are gone, but their legacy is not only in stone. It is in the world that was born from their demise. Though their reign has ended, their legacy is an indelible scar etched into the very stone of the earth. The evidence of their final cataclysmic day is not found merely in bone, but in the global architecture of our planet's geology. Among the most staggering discoveries is the signature of colossal tsunamis unleashed by the sheer, unimaginable force of the Chicxulub impact. In the immediate aftermath, walls of water hundreds of meters high, liquid mountains moving at the speed of a jet aircraft scoured the ancient coastlines. They did not just crash upon the shore, they annihilated it, carrying a slurry of sediment, life, and death deep into the continents. Geological records unearthed in places as remote as North Dakota, thousands of kilometers from the impact crater, bear the unmistakable marks of these titanic floods. Within these sedimentary layers, a chaotic graveyard tells a story of the world's last moments. Here, freshwater fish are found entombed alongside their marine cousins, their gills clogged with the tiny glass spherules of vaporized asteroid, the very shrapnel of the apocalypse, raining down from a darkened sky. They are frozen in time, marking the final, violent minutes of the Cretaceous period. But how can science reconstruct this ancient catastrophe with such chilling certainty? The answer lies buried in a thin, dark seam that encircles the globe. It is a layer rich in iridium, an element vanishingly rare in Earth's crust, yet abundant in the asteroids that wander the void between worlds. This layer, found consistently in rock strata dated to precisely 66 million years ago, is the asteroid's unmistakable calling card. It is a planetary tombstone. Above it, the world is silent. Below it, the world teems with giants. Nowhere is this transition more starkly illustrated than in the Hell Creek Formation of North America. Researchers drilling through its layers find a vibrant ecosystem of dinosaurs, plants, and countless other species thriving right up to the iridium boundary. Then, in the space of a single centimeter of rock, there is almost nothing. The fossil record is wiped clean. This abrupt, global silence is the most powerful testament to the impact's role as the primary architect of a mass extinction. Yet, from this planetary canvas of devastation, life, in its profound and stubborn resilience, began to stir. The recovery was not swift. For hundreds of thousands of years, the Earth was a ghost world, shrouded in a climatic winter, its ecosystems shattered. But in this silence, new opportunities arose. Life began to fill the vast ecological voids left by the dinosaurs. Mammals, for so long relegated to the shadows as small, nocturnal creatures scurrying beneath the feet of titans, began to diversify and grow. They stepped into roles once held by the planet's former masters, their lineage embarking on a new evolutionary journey. Another astonishing survivor was the crocodilian, a close cousin to the dinosaurs themselves. With their low-energy metabolism, their ability to endure long periods of inactivity and starvation, and their semi-aquatic nature, they weathered the post-impact horrors. These ancient reptiles are a living testament to the power of adaptation in the face of near-total annihilation. And from the ashes, evolution began to experiment in the most unexpected ways. Some 50 to 52 million years ago, an animal named Pachycetus roamed the riverbanks of ancient Asia. Roughly the size of a wolf, this four-legged, hoofed land mammal gave no outward sign of its incredible destiny. Yet something in its long, distinctive skull and the unique structure of its inner ear bones held the first clues of a radical future. This unassuming predator, hunting in the shallows, was the ancestor of the modern whale. Over millions of years, the transformation was absolute. Its powerful forelimbs, once used for walking, flattened and broadened into flippers for steering through the water. Its hind legs, no longer needed, shrank into vestigial remnants. The nostrils, once positioned at the front of its snout, began a slow, deliberate migration to the top of its head, ultimately becoming the blowhole that allows its descendants to breathe without breaking their majestic stride through the deep. The end of one world was, in truth, the violent birth of another. The asteroid R, a new story to unfold. From a single, terrifying moment of cosmic chance, a different path was forged. One that led, through eons of struggle and adaptation, to a world that could finally look back at the stars and comprehend the sheer, terrifying accident of its own existence. An anatomy in flux. A body remade by the irresistible pull of the sea. Nostrils, once positioned at the snout of a terrestrial mammal, began an inexorable migration, creeping upward over millennia to the crown of the skull. This was no simple cosmetic shift. It was a profound re-engineering, a design for a life spent between two worlds, granting the simple, vital gift of a breath snatched from the surface. On this new evolutionary trajectory, the hind limbs, once essential for navigating a world of rock and soil, became vestiges, shrinking with each successive generation until they vanished into the animal's very blueprint. Freed from the constraints of gravity, their bodies swelled, expanding to proportions that would have been impossible on land, achieving a truly colossal scale. This incredible journey from shore to abyss began in the warm, shallow waters of the ancient Tethys Sea. It was a vast primordial nursery nestled between the supercontinents of Gondwana and Laurasia, teeming with a vibrant tapestry of marine life. Here, the earliest cetaceans, still bearing the ghosts of their land-dwelling past, took their first tentative strokes, setting in motion a dynasty that would one day rule the deep. But as these pioneering mammals adapted to their new aquatic realm, other, more ancient lineages were perfecting the art of predation. And millions of years later, their descendants would rise to challenge the whale's newfound dominance. The most notorious of these titans was Carcharocles megalodon. Appearing some 23 million years ago, this was not merely a shark, it was a leviathan, a creature of almost mythical dimension, stretching to an astonishing 108 feet in length. It was an engine of extinction, a behemoth of cartilage and muscle that patrolled the global oceans with an unchallenged authority, its serrated teeth capable of shearing through the thickest bone. Yet, even this apex predator did not hunt in an empty ocean. It shared its world with other giants, including the whales it so often preyed upon. One of their ancestors, the formidable Basilosaurus, had already staked its claim. Despite a serpentine body that stretched 50 feet, Basilosaurus was one of the earliest true whales to command the seas, a fierce hunter of the Eocene epoch. Then, during the Miocene, between 8 and 12 million years ago, a new power emerged from the cetacean line, a titan built to fight titans, Leviathan melvillei. Named for the biblical beast and the author of Moby Dick, it was a close relative of the modern sperm whale, but possessed a ferocity its cousins have long since abandoned. Reaching an estimated 133 feet, its jaws were armed with the largest teeth of any known animal, daggers of ivory that made it one of the most formidable predators the oceans have ever witnessed. With its immense size and power, Leviathan reigned supreme, a true rival that dared to challenge the terrible reign of Megalodon itself. The story of oceanic giants, however, began long before the first mammal ever touched the water. Travel back 360 million years to the Devonian period, a time often called the Age of Fishes. Here swam the Ankylosaurus. This was not a creature of flesh and scale, but of armor and bone-crushing force. A placoderm, a fish encased in a thick, bony shield, its mouth held no teeth. Instead, it wielded sharpened plates of B. Further forward in time, during the Cretaceous period, the seas belonged to the reptiles. Chief among them was the Mosasaurus. At 55 feet, with a streamlined body and a powerful tail, it was the undisputed master of its domain. Often mistaken for a dinosaur, it was, in fact, a colossal marine lizard, a monitor lizard that had returned to the sea and evolved into a hyper-carnivore of terrifying efficiency. In these same waters swam a gentler giant, the turtle Archelon. One of the largest sea turtles to have ever lived, its shell alone measured nearly 13 feet across. It navigated the primeval seas with a serene grandeur, a silent witness to the savage dramas unfolding around it. While this epic of titans played out in the depths, another, quieter revolution was taking place on solid ground. From the ashes of the dinosaur extinction to a host of new forms, from the first rodents to the earliest carnivores. Among them, in the Paleocene epoch, some 66 million years ago, were the Miacids. Small, unassuming predators, they were the distant ancestors of all modern feliforms, the first faint whisper of the lion's roar and the tiger's stalk. They were a humble beginning for a lineage that would one day produce its own apex predators on land. From the armored fish of the Devonian to the reptilian lords of the Cretaceous, from the titanic clash of shark and whale to the subtle emergence of a new kind of hunter in the undergrowth, the planet's history is written as a saga of rising and falling dynasties. Each reign, no matter how absolute, proves to be ephemeral. Each apex, no matter how perfectly adapted, is merely a placeholder, waiting for the next great evolutionary shift. The throne of dominance is never truly owned. It is merely occupied for a fleeting moment in the immense, unceasing passage of deep time. In the deep past, an evolutionary arms race was underway. Across landscapes still recovering from the reign of dinosaurs, new forms of hunter were being forged in the crucible of survival. Among them, a creature cloaked in shadow emerged during the Oligocene epoch, Pro-Ilurus. It was the archetype, the the blueprint for the perfect ambush predator. In its compact frame, we see the future of the feline dynasty, jaws engineered for a devastating bite and the quiet lethality of retractable claws. From this foundational design, evolution would sculpt its masterpieces. Lines of descent radiated outwards, culminating in the majestic and terrifying saber-toothed cats, apex predators whose daggers of bone were engineered not for slicing, but for a single, precise killing puncture into the thick hides of prehistoric megafauna. But the feline was not the only predatory dynasty taking shape. A different path was being blazed by the ancestors of the dog. In the Eocene forests of North America, some 40 million years ago, a small, unassuming animal known as Hesperocyon darted through the undergrowth. It was no giant, but in its DNA lay the promise of the pack hunter. This creature is considered the wellspring from which all modern canids would flow, the wolves, the foxes, and the loyal companions at our sides today. Two distinct philosophies of the hunt, born in the same ancient world, destined to dominate the Cenozoic era. While the great carnivores perfected the art of the chase, another lineage was mastering an entirely different strategy for survival. The Cenozoic, the age of mammals, spanning a staggering 66 million years, was also the age of the sloth. These creatures flourished, branching into a spectacular array of forms that conquered vastly different ecological niches. There were the arboreal specialists, adapted for a life spent in the canopy, but there were also the ground sloths, giants that walked the earth. From the Oligocene until the very end of the Pleistocene, these terrestrial titans roamed the Americas. They were colossi of staggering proportions, some rivaling the largest bears ever to live. Four-legged behemoths armed with immense curving claws, they possessed formidable natural tools for both defense against predators and for excavating roots and tubers. For millions of years, their heavy footfalls echoed across ancient landscapes until their reign concluded in the Great Thaw at the end of the final Ice Age. Their lines were extinguished some 11,700 years ago, their colossal forms vanishing from the planet forever. Yet, their story did not end there. High in the trees, their smaller cousins had perfected a life inverted. The arboreal sloths developed impossibly long limbs and great curved claws that were more hook than weapon, allowing them to hang effortlessly from branches. They moved with a slow, deliberate grace, their lack of speed a form of camouflage in the dense, dappled light of the forest. Today, their only living descendants, the two-toed and three-toed sloths, are but faint echoes of this grandiose past, fragile inheritors of an ancient and profoundly successful legacy. But as the mammals diversified across the continents, an even more ancient and radical transformation was unfolding in the shadows. In the dim undergrowth of primeval forests, small reptiles were embarking on one of natural history's most audacious experiments. A new predator was being born. The serpent's tale is a complex narrative, its beginnings trace back more than 100 million years. Their ancestors were squamates, small lizards that scurried under the feet of dinosaurs, hunting insects in a world of giants. Over immense spans of time, evolution began a slow, inexorable process of subtraction and elongation. Their bodies stretched, their internal organs realigned, and their legs, once essential for locomotion, gradually receded, becoming mere vestiges before vanishing entirely. Fossils dating back some 95 million years reveal creatures caught in this transition. Serpentine bodies bearing the ghosts of hind limbs, testaments to a radical reinvention of the reptilian form. This new body plan demanded a new way of seeing, of moving, of killing, leading to the development of skulls with astonishing flexibility. This evolutionary path, this stripping away of limbs, was not a retreat. It was the forging of a new and terrifyingly efficient predator, and its ultimate expression would rise from the sweltering, super greenhouse jungles of a post-dinosaur world, the Tyrannosaurus. From the silent stalk of the first cat to the slow ascent of the sloth, from the pack hunter's cry to the serpent's sinuous glide, every fossil is a testament to life's relentless experimentation. They are the silent architects of the world we know, their vanished forms a profound reminder that on this planet, existence is not a permanent state, but a fleeting, magnificent performance. In the shadow of a vanished age, some 60 million years ago, a new dynasty was forged in the steaming tropical swamps of a world reborn from ash. The great reptiles were gone, swept from the earth by a cataclysm from the heavens. But in the vacuum they left behind, life, in its relentless drive to conquer, produced a new and terrifying sovereign. Here, a titan stirred. Its name was Titanoboa. It was a serpent of impossible scale, a creature that defied the very limits of biological engineering. Reaching lengths of up to 42 feet and a weight exceeding a ton, it was the undisputed apex predator of the Paleocene epoch. Its domain was a labyrinth of murky water and dense, humid forest, a hothouse world where it reigned with absolute authority. With a body of crushing, constricting force, it hunted the giant crocodiles and armored turtles that shared its watery kingdom. Titanoboa was not merely a snake, it was a testament to the explosive potential of life, a symbol of evolutionary power unleashed to dominate a world in recovery. This was a pattern that would repeat across the globe, as life rushed to fill the niches left vacant by the dinosaurs. From the colossal ground sloths of the Americas to the flightless terror birds that stalked the plains, evolution experimented with size and form on a magnificent scale. Each fossil unearthed is a fragment of that lost narrative, a single piece in a grand mosaic that reveals the breathtaking complexity of our planet's past. From the ancient Tethys Sea to the vast terrestrial savannas, the history of life is an immense saga of adaptation, resilience, and transformation. The species that thrived were those that molded themselves to change, conquering environments that once seemed inhospitable. But the stage for this new act in Earth's drama was set by an event of unimaginable violence. The legacy of the Chicxulub impactor is more than a layer of iridium in the geologic record. It is a permanent scar on the biography of our world. It is a chilling narrative of destruction and rebirth, a reminder that in a constantly moving universe, life is both profoundly resilient and terrifyingly vulnerable. And as we turn our gaze to the night sky, the question inevitably arises, could it happen again? The answer is an unsettling affirmative. Objects of similar, terrifying potential still trace their silent orbits through the cosmic neighborhood we call home. Today, science grants us the vision to see them coming. Our telescopes scan the darkness, cataloging threats, calculating trajectories. But vision is not readiness. The question echoes through our observatories and laboratories. Are we prepared to answer such a threat? Let us imagine for a moment a different history, a world spared, a planet where the Chicxulub asteroid missed its mark, continuing its lonely journey through the void, a world where the 165 million year reign of the dinosaurs never ended. It is probable their dominance would have continued, perhaps in forms we can barely conceive. They had already demonstrated a stunning capacity for adligence, could have evolved toward even greater cognitive complexity. Perhaps we would have seen the rise of sophisticated pack hunters, or even the dawn of a unique saurian intelligence. In such a world, the place of mammals, and eventually humans, would be profoundly different. Our distant ancestors, small and furtive, would have remained in the shadows, their evolutionary potential forever suppressed by the giants that walked the earth. Humanity, in this alternate timeline, would almost certainly never have arisen. The dinosaurs did not vanish entirely. Their legacy is written in the sky. It lives on in the hollow bones and feathered flight of every bird that soars above us. They are a testament to a world that was. But their absence on the ground tells a deeper story. It is a story of contingency, of cosmic chance. We exist not by destiny, but by the fluke of a celestial collision that cleared the stage. The silence of the dinosaurs is the sound of our own beginning. 66 million years ago, an object of immense power, a wanderer from the deep cosmos, continued its silent journey through the void, its trajectory missing our world by a whisper. The cataclysm that would end an era never came. The sky did not burn. The long winter did not fall. And on the Earth below, the age of reptiles did not end. It was just beginning a new, more complex chapter. On the Great Plains and in the dense forests, dinosaurs were undergoing a subtle but profound transformation. The old narratives of brute force were giving way to new stories of intricate social bonds. Herds of hadrosaurs, with their elaborate cranial crests, would have evolved even more sophisticated forms of vocal communication, their calls echoing across the landscape, a complex language of warnings, mating rituals, and familial connection. Predation, too, would have become a more cerebral art. Packs of dromaeosaurs, the raptors, might have honed their cooperative hunting strategies to a level of lethal precision, a coordinated dance of tooth and claw orchestrated by a collective intelligence. Above them, the skies remained the undisputed territory of the pterosaurs. These were not the lumbering gliders of earlier ages, but true masters of the air. Species diepted further for extreme long-distance flight. We can imagine them as the planet's first true globetrotters, crossing entire oceans on thermal updrafts, their immense shadows sliding over continents, colonizing new lands in a way no modern bird has ever achieved. They would be the silent, soaring sentinels of this alternate Earth. And in the world's oceans, a similar dynasty of titans would have persisted. The mosasaurs, the great marine lizards, would continue their uncontested dominion as the apex predators of the sea. Their evolution might have driven them into even deeper, darker waters, developing adaptations for crushing pressure and abyssal hunting, their capabilities rivaling the most formidable hunters of our own timeline, the great sharks and the killer whales. The oceans would have remained a realm of reptilian supremacy. But where in this world are we? What would have become of the mammals? At the close of the Cretaceous, our distant ancestors were already diversifying, but they were creatures of the night, small, furtive beings occupying the planet's margins. Without the mass extinction event to clear the stay, and complexity would be forever blocked. They would be confined to the roles of prey, of insect hunters, of small omnivores scurrying through the undergrowth, their potential for greatness forever capped by the world's ruling class. In this world without humans, the question of advanced intelligence becomes a fascinating enigma. Some paleontologists point to the theropods, the direct ancestors of birds, as creatures already showing signs of a growing ioscopic vision and agile, grasping hands. Given millions of more years of uninterrupted evolution, could they have crossed the threshold? Perhaps, over an immense timescale, a species of intelligent dinosauroid might have emerged. Not a creature of our own image, but something entirely different, a sentient being forged from a reptilian lineage, its civilization, its philosophy, its very understanding of the universe, alien to our own. The planet itself would have worn a different face. The Cretaceous forests, dominated by colossal ferns, cycads, and conifers, might have continued to thrive. The explosive rise of the angiosperms, the flowering plants, may have been far slower. Their rapid expansion in our world was fueled by the ecological vacuum left by the extinction, which opened up vast new spaces for them to colonize. In a world still shaped by the titanic appetites of herbivorous dinosaurs, the sauropods and hadrosaurs, the landscape would be maintained in a state of dynamic equilibrium. These living bulldozers were the ecosystem's engineers, felling trees, clearing paths, and spreading seeds, maintaining a world of open forests and vast fern savannas. Without the Chicxulub impact and the subsequent planet-altering volcanic activity it triggered, the global climate could have remained far more stable, a long, warm greenhouse state unbroken by the sharp, chaotic shifts that defined our own Cenozoic era. This stability would have fostered a slow, continuous cycle of evolution, a world of deep time and gradual change. It is a world lost to a single, violent moment, a world of staggering biological grandeur where the great evolutionary experiment of the dinosaurs was allowed to run its course. To contemplate this alternate Earth is to understand the profound contingency of our own existence. Our dominion was not an inevitability written in the stars. It was the improbable outcome of a cosmic accident, a chance event that erased one world to make way for another. The forces that sculpted our modern world were born from chaos. 66 million years ago, a rock the size of a mountain, traveling faster than a speeding bullet, ended an epoch. Without this singular, violent disturbance, the planet might have continued its long, languid journey through a warm and humid age, a greenhouse state that could have persisted for millions of years more, perhaps indefinitely postponing the great ice ages that would later chisel the face of the Earth. And yet, evolution is a river that, when dammed, simply finds a neve been a static paradise. It would have remained a world subject to profound, inexorable forces. The slow, grinding ballet of tectonic plates would continue to rearrange continents, raising mountains and closing seaways. Deep within the mantle, plumes of molten rock would fuel volcanic activity on a scale almost unimaginable to us today, choking the skies with ash and rewriting regional climates in fire. A massive eruption, a truly cataclysmic flood basalt event, could have triggered significant, albeit more localized, shifts, altering ecosystems in sudden and unexpected ways. The planet's position in the cosmic firing range would also remain unchanged. Its journey through the solar system is a perpetual dance through a field of debris. The asteroid that carved the Chicxulub crater was not the first, nor would it have been the last. Without that specific event, the long-term probability of other, future collisions, perhaps smaller, perhaps even larger, could have reshaped the story of life in equally dramatic fashion. The threat was never a question of if, but of when and where. In a world spared this specific apocalypse, the gradual, unceasing rhythm of evolution would have continued. The great reptilian dynasties, the dinosaurs on land, the mosasaurs and plesiosaurs in the seas, the pterosaurs in the skies, would have further consolidated their dominion. This alternate timeline presents a vision of breathtaking possibilities, but also of profound limitations. Perhaps the very absence of a global reset button would have slowed the pace of evolutionary innovation in some lineages while accelerating it in others. Competition, not catastrophe, would have been the primary engine of change. This relentless pressure would have forged remarkable biological innovations. We can envision dinosaurs evolving ever more sophisticated forms of communication, their world a vibrant, noisy tapestry of sound and color. Complex symphonies of calls echoing through dense cycad forests, intricate visual displays, crests flushing with color, feathers shimmering in elaborate social rituals designed to attract mates, intimidate rivals, and coordinate complex hunts. The evolutionary arms race between predator and prey would have reached heights of specialization we can only guess at. But what of our own ancestors? What of the mammals? Without the mass extinction event to clear the ecological stage, these small, furtive creatures would have faced a far more difficult evolutionary path. Their grand story, our story, would have been a footnote, a forgotten whisper in the deep history of a reptilian Worubterranean niches. Surviving as hunters of insects or consumers of seeds, a life lived under the feet of giants. The evolution of larger mammals, the ree, been a biological impossibility in a world so thoroughly and completely dominated by a different form of life. The fate of the birds presents another intriguing puzzle. As the direct descendants of theropod dinosaurs, they were already undergoing a vibrant diversification in the late Cretaceous. Without the impact, their evolutionary trajectory is uncertain. Would they have continued to flourish, carving out new niches in the air? Or would the continued dominance of the vast and varied pterosaurs, their non-avian dinosaur cousins, have suppressed their expansion, limiting them to a smaller role in the global ecosystem? This thought experiment forces us to confront a profound question. If the dinosaurian reign had continued unabated for another 66 million years, could intelligence, as we understand it, have emerged from a reptilian lineage? Could a species of troodontid or dromaeosaur, already possessing relatively large brains and complex behaviors, have crossed that mysterious threshold into sapience? And if they had, what form would their civilization take? Would they have developed tools, technology, and culture, their world built around a biology and a psychology utterly alien to our own? Or is the path to high intelligence so narrow, so contingent on the specific evolutionary pressures faced by mammals, that it represents a singular, unrepeatable fluke? One thing is certain: the impact was more than an extinction. It was a catalyst, a crucible of fire and death that gave the modern Earth its unique shape and biodiversity. It shattered the existing order, creating a power vacuum that allowed the meek to inherit the Earth. In this world without that single, terrible day, the tapestry of life would be woven with entirely different threads. The planet would be a monument to stability, to the long, unbroken reign of its Mesozoic masters. But our own consciousness, our ability to even contemplate this alternate past, is the direct and undeniable legacy of their annihilation. It is a humbling reminder that our own existence is not an inevitability, but the improbable outcome of cosmic chance, written in the ashes of a world that was lost. In the silent theater of the cosmos, a trajectory was altered. Had the 10-kilometer-wide messenger of doom strayed by a fraction of a degree, had its path been a whisper off course, it would have sailed harmlessly past our world. The Cretaceous period would not have ended in a shroud of fire and ash. Instead, it would have simply continued. The reign of the dinosaurs, uninterrupted for over 150 million years, would have marched onward into the deep future. In this world untouched by cosmic violence, the skies would have become the stage for a new evolutionary drama. Without the ecological vacuum created by the Great Extinction, the winged dinosaurs, the ancestors of our birds, would have faced no limits. They would have continued to prosper, to diversify, seizing the nocturnal niches, carnassial creatures, echoes of the pterosaurs, casting vast shadows across the land. Some, with wingspans rivaling small aircraft, would have been the apex predators of the air. Others, great winged herbivores, drifting through the canopy of primordial forests. And with the gradual, inexorable advance of evolution, the question of intelligence would not be a matter of if, but of when, and in whom. The seeds were already high for its time, suggesting a considerable cognitive potential. A glimmer of complex problem-solving, of social structure, was already present. Given millions of more years, it is entirely plausible that a lineage of sentient dinosaurs could have emerged from these clever hunters. This scenario opens a chasm of fascinating questions. What would a civilization constructed by non-mammalian in feet? Would they create cultural artifacts, their art and architecture shaped by a reptilian mind, a different perception of color and sound? How would a society born of predators coexist with the staggering megafauna that surrounded them? Their world would be a constant negotiation with giants. Yet, even in the absence of the Chicxulub impactor, the planet would not have been a tranquil paradise. Earth is a restless engine of change. Other forces, both cosmic and geological, would lie in wait. A catastrophic volcanic event, such as the one that created the Deccan Traps in modern-day India, could still have poisoned the skies. This would have been a different kind of apocalypse, not a sudden violent strike, but a slow, suffocating death, as millennia of eruptions choked the atmosphere and acidified the oceans, triggering a collapse of ecosystems from the bottom up. Simultaneously, the slow dance of the continents would continue. The inexorable drift of tectonic plates would reshape the world, sundering landmasses, raising mountain ranges, and creating new oceans. These geographic barriers would isolate populations, driving speciation and forging entirely new forms of life in a world of ever-shifting islands and continents. Perhaps the greatest mystery of this alternate Earth is how the dinosaurs' continued dominion would have sculpted the planet itself. The global ecological balance would be fundamentally different. The great biogeochemical cycles of carbon, of nitro aided by saurian life, the very breath of these titans, multiplied by billions over millions of years, would have altered the composition of the atmosphere. If their intelligent descendants had achieved a technological stage, it could have initiated an era akin to our own Anthropocene. A Saurianthropocene, where a dominant species profoundly reshapes the environment, the climate, and even the visual appearance of the planet as seen from the cold distance of space. But the rock did not miss. It struck with the force of 10 billion atomic bombs, and the long age of reptiles was brought to a calamitous end. When we reflect upon this divergent timeline, we are faced with the profound role that chance and cosmic contingency play in the destiny of life. Our own existence, the rise of mammals, the dawn of human consciousness, all of it is predicated on that single, violent moment 66 million years ago. The story of the dinosaurs is not merely one of extinction. It is a testament to transformation, survival, and a legacy that breathes and flies among us today. So the next time you hear the intricate song of a bird, or watch it take to the sky, remember, you are witnessing a living relic, a distant, beautiful echo of a lost world, and a whisper of the earth that might have been. The evidence, etched in stone and sediment, continues to illuminate the final, desperate days of the dinosaurs. We are piecing together the last moments of a Mesozoic empire, a world silenced by a single, catastrophic impact that forever altered the course of life on this planet. From the ashes of that global fire, unting the small, the resilient, the adaptable. In the shadow of this great extinction lies the genesis of our own world, a stark reminder that history is written not only by the survivors, but by the cataclysms that choose them.